Third floor hallway, crimson gold, dusty mirrors, air too cold. A bellboy humming half a tune somewhere underneath the moon. The elevator groaned all night, like an old man losing fights. Room keys dangled from thin brass rings beside forgotten wedding things. You wore white satin after dark, lipstick shaped like tiny marks, reading poems near the window fan, ignoring every lonely man. The orchestra below the stairs played heartbreak into folding chairs. A clarinet cried soft and thin, like smoke escaping from your skin. No one knew your real first name, only rumors traveled the same. She arrived when autumn died. She drinks champagne with tears inside. At 2:15 the ceiling shook, thunder rolled through every book. You closed your eyes beside the light, like someone listening for goodbye. Then morning never truly came. The hotel stayed exactly the same, still frozen somewhere after rain, still breathing through the saxophone pain. And sometimes when the city sleeps, that old hotel still softly weeps, while phantom high heels cross the floor, then stop beside room 34. The station clock was losing time again. Rain tapped slow against the window pane. A porter slept beside a mountain of bags, while tired neon trembled through the glass. You arrived in navy velvet gloves, with a face too calm for falling in love. Ordered black coffee, nothing more. then traced little circles on the counter's chrome. The band downstairs played crooked and low, like a river too weary to flow. A trumpet coughed through clouds of blue, and every note leaned closer to you. I watched your shadow cross the station floor, like a memory walking through a war. You never smiled, not even once, but somehow the whole room softened at once. No promises, no farewell scene, just cigarette smoke and magazines. Then a midnight telegram arrived, folded sharp like a pocket knife. You read it once beneath the station light and vanished quietly into the night. Now every winter when the trains roll through, that old piano remembers you. And somewhere beyond the rails and rain, your high heels echo back again. Everyone moved fast that night. Champagne laughter, diamonds bright, silver dresses, polished shoes, trumpets burning midnight blues. But you danced slow, so slow, the whole orchestra nearly fell apart, trying to follow. Your heart, the drummer missed his little cue. The piano player stared at you. Even the waiter holding wine forgot the table, number 9. You moved like candles, smoking air. One black glove slipping from your chair, a strand of pearls against your throat, a broken high note softly afloat. No smile, no tears, no dramatic scene, just eyes that looked like places people leave unseen. Outside, taxi breeze hissed through rain. Inside the sax cried out your name, and every man pretended cool, while drowning quietly, like fools. Then came that song around 2:30, the one nobody knew but you. You closed your eyes beside the band and slowly reached for someone's hand. For one brief dance the room stood still, like time itself had lost its will. And when the final trumpet fell, the silence rang like hotel bells. Now years have passed, the club is gone, the records cracked, the lights moved on. But somewhere deep in midnight's glow, a woman still dances far too slow. The red room on Orchard Street. There was a room above Orchard Street, where broken lovers used to meet. Red wallpaper, crooked fan, a piano missing half its hands. The owner smoked cheap Turkish gold and lied about her growing old. She kept dead roses in a vase beside a photograph with no face. You came each Thursday after 10, never arriving with the same men, always wearing different shades of velvet gloves and silk brocade. The saxophone downstairs would moan like a dog left out alone, while whiskey melted into ice and lonely mouths repeated lies. One night the city lost its power, candles trembled for an hour, and shadows climbed the crimson walls like dancers drifting through old holes. You laughed once, low and strange, enough to make the whole room change. Even the storm outside grew still, listening beyond the windowsill, as if the rain itself believed you carried things too sad to leave. Then near dawn you crossed the floor, set your glass beside the door, placed a record on the stand, and vanished before the final band. No goodbye, no explanation, only perfume station vibration. Now Orchid Street is cold and bare, but sometimes jazz still leaks from there. And taxi drivers passing slow swear they see your cigarette glow. The movie ended after 1. Black umbrellas blocked the sun. People vanished down the street, leaving rain beneath their feet. The ticket girl turned off the sign. One weak bulb continued to shine. Popcorn boxes, velvet seats, ghosts of music in the heat. You stayed behind the final row, wearing fox fur white as snow. One long cigarette in hand, like a queen without a land. The projector clicked alone, throwing light on peeling gold. Old romance across the wall, half remembered by it all. A trumpet drifted from the bar next door, low and bruised like distant war, while thunder pressed against the sky, like it forgot how not to cry. You whispered softly, leave the screen, like talking to a broken dream. Then stood beneath the silver light, eyes darker than the storm outside. And for a second all the rain seemed frozen in the window pane. No kiss, no final embrace, only sadness dressed in grace. The janitor swept quietly nearby, without once looking in your eyes, as though lonely women after dark could disappear without a mark. Now every theater born too old still carries traces of your smoke, and somewhere through projector light you walk back into every diner stayed awake till dawn. Coffee burned and jukebox hummed. Truckers talked through clouds of smoke. Waitresses laughed at tired jokes. Outside the avenue was wet. Taxi lights and cigarettes. Inside, the clock above the pie looked too exhausted to survive. You sat beside the jukebox glow in a powder blue silk bow, reading headlines from July like they personally could lie. A sailor asked you for a dance. You answered with a sideways glance, then dropped a nickel in the slot for some old tune the city forgot. The record scratched, the trumpet cried, a slow foxtrot about goodbye. Suddenly the diner air turned softer than the midnight there. Even spoons and coffee steam felt trapped inside somebody's dream. You stirred cream without a sound, watching raindrops gather round, while neon signs across the street blinkered tiredly through the heat. At 3:15, thunder rolled, the pie display went dark and cold. Someone cursed the storm outside, someone laughed and ordered rye. But you just stood beside the song like you had belonged there all along, then pulled your gloves on one by one and disappeared before the sun. Now every lonely roadside place still carries echoes of your face, and somewhere old jukeboxes play for girls who never truly stay. The elevator operator had stopped asking questions years ago. Too many diamonds, too many lies, too many people leaving slow. Floor 7 smelled like perfume and rain. Floor 9 like champagne gone insane. But floor 13, where you stepped in, felt colder than the month had been. You wore emerald satin to your knees, long gloves soft as evening breeze, a tiny gold lighter in your hand, clicking like a nervous band. No one spoke. The cables hummed, the city flickered far below. Somewhere distant, a trumpet wandered through another midnight show. You watched the numbers rise in red, like counting little ghosts instead, while cigarette smoke curled around the mirrored walls without a sound. A box of brews beneath one eye pretended not to look too long. A wealthy widow held her pearls like they still knew right from wrong. Then suddenly the elevator shook, the lights went dim, the old man swore, and for one breathless silent second, nobody remembered what for. You laughed quietly through the dark, not happy, not cruel, just tired, like someone who had danced too long inside rooms filled with fire. When the lights returned again, you were gone before floor 10. Only smoke remained behind, and lipstick on the silver line. Now old hotels still hum at night, their elevators weak with age, and somewhere deep between the floors, your shadow waits beside the cage. Snow leans softly on the town, streetcars groan their way downtown, and every storefront wore a glow, too warm for all that ice below. The supper club on Mercer Lane served gin, bad luck, and sweet champagne. A pianist with tired hands played love songs slower than the band. You always chose the table near the frosted window every year. Same black dress, same silver ring, same untouched glass of everything. The waiter knew to leave you be, just set the ashtray silently, while outside taxis drifted white like tired ships through winter night. o'clock the singer came, a velvet voice with borrowed pain. But halfway through the second tune, his eyes found yours across the room. And something changed. The drummer slowed, the bass fell deep and hollow-toned. Even the chandelier above seemed heavy with unfinished love. You lit a cigarette so calm, it looked rehearsed upon your arm, then stared beyond the snowy street, like waiting for forgotten feet. Near midnight someone shut the door. The cold rolled gently on the floor. You finally touched the glass of wine, but never drank it, not this time. Then from your purse you pulled a note, a tiny page somebody wrote. Read it once beneath the light, and burned it in the ashtray bright. No tears fell, no trembling scene, only smoke where words had been. By closing time, the club stood still, the piano silent on the hill, and all that lingered near the pain was your reflection in the rain. Bleecker Street was wet with light, rain and neon mixed all night. Taxi tires hummed below, like restless hearts too tired to go. A saxophone from somewhere far leaked through the doorway of a bar, slow enough to bend the air, soft enough to feel unfair. You stood beneath the hotel sign, in dark cherry silk and satin shine. One heel tap into the beat, smoke curling warm into the street. The florist closing up at 2 paused a little watching you. Even the cop beside the train forgot the cold and watched the rain. You never looked around too much, never rushed a single touch, just held your cigarette that way women do in old cabaret. Inside the club, the ceiling fan spun lazy circles over hands. Poker faces, melting ice, cheap cologne and loaded dice. Then the piano found a tune, heavy as perfume in a room, and every lonely man inside turned slowly when you stepped by. No grand entrance, no loud applause, breaking laws. You sat beside the bandstand light, crossed your legs slow, left to right, while the singer lost his place, trying not to stare at your face. At one point thunder split the sky, someone laughed a little too high. You smiled once into your glass, and somehow made the whole night pass. Now Bleecker Street has changed its name. The old club burned, then winter came. But some nights after closing time, the city still remembers mine. The perfume, the smoke, the rain-soaked glow, and the woman who moved too slow. Nobody remembered who left it there. A little blue matchbook beside the piano ashtray, bent at the corners, smelling faintly of jasmine and smoke. The harbor room stayed crowded late, sailors, gamblers, cheap first dates, a trumpet fighting through the haze, whiskey trapped in yellow haze. Outside, the harbor fog rolled slow, swallowing every dockside glow. Inside, the band kept dragging time, like old men hauling rope and wine. You arrived without a coat, velvet wrapped around your throat, hair pinned high with silver combs, looking far from ordinary homes. The bartender nearly dropped a glass, the drummer missed a beat that passed. Even the women dressed in pearls watched you cross the room in curls. You asked the pianist quietly, "Do you still know Autumn Blue?" He froze a second, then nodded once, like soldiers do. The melody came cracked and low, a tired tune from years ago. And when you started humming soft, the whole room leaned a little off. Not because you sang so grand, but because you sounded like someone holding broken glass very carefully in their hands. A man in uniform stood near, pretending not to disappear, while cigarette smoke wrapped the lights like ghosts refusing morning nights. Then halfway through the final verse, you stopped, as though remembering worse, placed money gently by your drink, and vanished before anyone could think. Only that blue matchbook remained beside the ashtray stained with rain. And now the harbor room plays slow whenever harbor winds still blow. At 1:30 on Madison, the city dripped in silver rain. Streetlights buzzed like tired flies above the empty avenue lanes. A telephone booth stood alone, fogged with smoke and midnight cold, beside a pharmacy asleep, and headlines no one bought no more. He stepped out from a checker cab in dark blue satin trimmed with black, one gloved hand around your throat, the other clutching something flat. The driver watched you through the glass like he had seen this scene before. A woman dressed too beautifully for weather, loneliness and war. Inside the booth, the yellow light turned your lipstick copper red. Rain rolled softly down the pane like nervous thoughts inside your head. You dropped a nickel, waited long, while somewhere far a trumpet song floated from a basement bar like heartbreak drifting from afar. No answer came. You closed your eyes. The city hummed. A train went by. Then finally a voice appeared, so quiet it almost disappeared. You didn't cry, you didn't plead, you only breathed, I understand. Then silence stretched between the wires like smoke escaping from your hands. When you stepped back into the rain, you somehow looked both proud and drained, like someone carrying fragile things too heavy for another spring. The cab was gone. The street stood still. Neon flickered down the hill, and all night long the booth remained, glowing softly through the rain. Now old men sweeping sidewalks late still talk about that winter date. The woman dressed in midnight blue who vanished before 2:30. The man who never applauded. Every Friday after 10, He took the corner seat again. Gray wool coat, black leather shoes, a face untouched by winds or blues. The Orchid Club stayed loud till dawn, trumpets hot and bourbon strong. Girls in satin crossed the haze like moving flames through cabaret. And then came you, not glamorous, not sparkling bright, just a dark green dress, hairpin simple, voice low as midnight. The band began almost too slow, a tired rhythm dragging low. But when you sang, the room grew still, like winter resting on a hill. Your voice wasn't polished smooth at all. It cracked a little on certain words, dipped rough around the edges, warm like old radio static. You almost spoke the melody, half singing, half remembering, with sleepy phrasing, late entrances and tiny breaths left in. Not dramatic, not powerful, human. The pianist followed carefully, as though the song might disappear, while cigarette smoke floated high beneath the tired chandelier. The crowd stopped laughing tableside, even glasses rested quiet. And through the whole slow aching tune, that man just listened without moving. No smile, no drink, no applause, only eyes too full for somebody that calm. Then after midnight came the end. You bowed your head, the lights went dim. People clapped like waking dreams, except for him. He simply stood, adjusted gloves, placed cash beside untouched whiskey, and walked out slowly through the smoke without once looking back. But near the chair where he had stayed, the waitress found a wedding ring. At 4 a.m. the city looked too tired to continue. Streetcars empty, windows dark, rainwater silver blue. Only one small bakery stayed alive on Carmine Avenue. Warm bread breathing through the cold, like something honest still came through. You sat beside the window there, in a beige wool evening coat, hair loosened from the long nightclub, lipstick faded, the throat. No orchestra, no crowded room, no diamonds catching fire, only an old tabletop radio playing soft piano through static wire. The baker rolled his sleeves in flour, never asked you why you came, just poured black coffee silently, like he already knew your name. Outside, newspapers hit the street, a lonely truck rode slowly by, and somewhere far beyond the fog, a ship horn cried against the sky. You listen to the radio singer, low and delicate and near, like she was singing only for the tired souls awake to hear. And quietly you started humming, barely louder than the rain, not performing, not seducing, just trying to stay warm again. Your voice carried gentle dust inside it, soft around the edges, like old velvet left too long near winter windows. The baker stopped kneading halfway, even the clock seemed slow, and for a moment all the world moved carefully and low. When morning finally touched the glass, you stood without a word, left coins beside the coffee cup, and disappeared with the birds. Now old men walking Carmine Street still claim before the dawn that little bakery smells sometimes like your forgotten perfume song. Snow melted softly down the glass. Midnight buses drifted past, and somewhere down on Mercer Lane, a saxophone rehearsed the rain. Above a tiny record shop, one narrow apartment stayed awake. A yellow lamp, a steaming cup, a floor that softly creaked. You sat beside the open window, wrapped in cream-colored silk, reading old song lyrics slowly, like letters never built. No makeup left except faint red along the edge of one cigarette. No audience, no applause, no need radio played low downstairs, a sleepy trio after 2. Piano wandering carefully, brushes soft and blue. And then you started singing too, not loudly, not perfectly, just quietly into the room, like speaking to your memory. Your voice stayed close against the mic, warm breath and tired vowels. A fragile little ribbon sound floating through the hour. Certain notes nearly disappeared, some words arrived half late, but every line felt honest in a way rehearsals never make. Outside, snow gathered on the signs. The city dimmed its glow, and even passing taxi lights seemed softer, moving slow. You hum between the verses sometimes, letting silence fill the air, while the radiator clicked in rhythm, like somebody still there. Near dawn, the final record stopped. The room fell still and pale. You closed the window carefully against the winter rail, then sat another minute longer, watching rooftops fade to gray, as though the night had asked you softly not to go away. After midnight, all the flower stands along Atlantic Avenue looked like tired little islands floating under neon blue. The streets were nearly empty then, just newspaper boys and rain. A bus mechanic smoking slow, a distant elevated train. You walked alone beneath the signs, with lilies wrapped in paper string, dark brown coat against the wind, small gold earrings barely glinting. No nightclub crowd, no smoky bar, no orchestra in sight, only city air gone quiet at the fragile edge of night. A radio from bedroom somewhere upstairs, played a sleepy jazz quartet. Piano soft as folded fabric, brushes whispering with regret. You pause beside a bakery door, closed your eyes to hear it clearer, and under that pale winter lamp, your shadow looked older, thinner. Then softly, almost under breath, you started singing with a melody. Not performing for the street, not shaping notes dramatically, just letting little pieces drift into the freezing air. Your voice was light and feathered, almost fragile if compared to singers chasing spotlight rooms and loud theatrical despair. You sang like someone careful not to wake the sleeping city up, like warmth remaining quietly inside an untouched coffee cup. The flowers trembled in your arms whenever taxis rolled nearby, and every note dissolved slowly into the silver sky. At last the music upstairs stopped, the silence settled thin. You looked once toward the darkened glass and pulled your coat back in. By morning all the rain had cleared, the avenue turned gold, but one small florist later swore the lilies still smelled warm and old. The little cafe near the bridge stayed open after 2. Its windows blurred with coffee steam and tired shades of blue. A woman washed the empty cups, her radio played low, and outside snow moved lazily across the street below. You came in wearing charcoal wool and gloves the color cream, carrying that quiet kind of face people only see in dreams. No perfume loud enough to stay, no diamonds catching light, just a calm and faded elegance made softer by the night. You chose the booth beside the wall near the sleeping coat rack stand, then warmed your fingers quietly around a porcelain cup in hand. The song upon the radio was old even back then, a slow and fragile melody about losing someone again. And while the trumpet murmured low like fog against the sea, You sang along so quietly, it almost escaped the room entirely. Your voice stayed close and narrow, gentle as turning pages, with little pauses in between, like thoughts arriving late. Not sad enough for heartbreak, not happy enough for peace. Just the sound of someone letting the long day release. The waitress stopped to listen once, then looked away polite, as though certain songs belong only to the night. Outside, the bridge lights flickered gold. A taxi drifted by, and somewhere in the sleeping city, morning waited shy. When the final chorus ended, you smiled a little at the cup, placed coins beneath the saucer, pulled your woolen collar up, then vanished softly through the door into the silver dawn, leaving only radio warmth in the cafe carrying on. By 1 a.m. the restaurant had nearly emptied out. Only candlelight and dishes quietly moving about. Rain tapped lightly on the glass. The kitchen hummed down low, and somewhere near the backroom wall, a small piano moved slow. You sat alone beside the aisle in a navy evening coat, reading through a folded letter, no longer worth what it once wrote. The waiter passed without a word, already understanding that certain women after midnight prefer silence over standing. A cello joined the piano then, soft and dark like winter air, and underneath that fragile tune you loosened your curled hair. No audience turned around, no spotlight touched your face. The whole room simply carried on at its exhausted pace. Still, you began to sing a little, barely louder than the rain, with a tired velvet softness and warmth beneath the pain. Your phrasing drifted gently behind, never rushing toward the beat, like footsteps echoing quietly along an empty street. Some notes faded into breath, some words almost disappeared, but every line felt lived in, worn smooth by too many years. A man near the doorway stopped, one hand still around his hat, listening without moving to where your small voice sat. Then the song dissolved away, the piano answered low, the candles bent against the draft from windows lined with snow. You folded up the letter once, placed it under your untouched wine, stood slowly from the wooden chair and left before closing time. Later, while stacking glasses, the waiter found your coat still hanging softly on the chair, like a final quiet note. A bookstore on Hanover Street, closed every night at 10. But somehow lights still glowed upstairs, long after closing then. Dust floated through the amber lamps, rain rested on the panes, and every shelf smelled faintly of old paper, smoke, and trains. You stayed behind to lock the doors in a soft brown cashmere dress, hairpin loose with tired hands, collar slightly in distress. No jazz club crowd, no crowded floor, no silver dresses bright, only pages turning softly in the hush of winter night. A portable radio on the desk played a quiet little trio, piano slow and careful, clarinet breathing low. You climbed the ladder near the wall to place returns away, then paused halfway to hear the song drifting through the gray. And there, above the sleeping city, you started singing softly too, not like performers chasing rooms, not polished, not perfectly tuned. Your voice carried sleepy warmth, dry at the edges, close and private, like someone humming to themselves while trying not to clarinet circled underneath. The piano barely moved, and every little breath you took felt fragile in the room. Outside, snow settled over signs, streetcars faded one by one, while inside only radio glow and dust remained awake till dawn. When the final record ended, you stood there listening still, as though the quiet afterward was part of the music still. And slowly closed the radio, turned the hanging lamp down low, and disappeared between the shelves like someone the night already knows. Across the courtyard, every window went dark around midnight, except the one above the laundromat, still glowing pale and white. A fan turned slowly near the ceiling. Rainwater traced the fire escape, and somewhere far below the alley, a radio leaked through the haze. You stood barefoot near the kitchen sink, in a pale blue satin robe, hair falling loose around your shoulders. In the quiet amber glow, no audience, no smoky club, no musicians dressed in black, only distant jazz from someone else's room, floating softly through the cracks. The trumpet sounded tired tonight, the piano small and thin, like strangers trying carefully to let each other in. You opened up the curtains wide to watch the storm drift slow, and started singing to yourself so gently, almost low enough not to show. Your voice wasn't heavy with heartbreak, wasn't bright with romance too, just warm and late and human, like the city after 2. Certain words blurred into humming, certain notes dissolved in air, while thunder rolled behind the rooftops like furniture somewhere. The neighbor smoking by his window stopped moving for a while, listening across the rainy dark to your quiet drifting style. You never pushed the melody, never reached for something grand. You let the phrases rest softly, like tired rings upon a hand. Near dawn, the radio downstairs began to lose its sound. The trumpet faded into static. Morning buses rolled around. You closed the curtains slowly, then the room turned dim and blue. And somewhere in that sleeping block, the silence still remembered you. Steam climbed slowly from the street outside the laundromat. Neon buzzing tired blue against the puddles black. Inside, the dryers turned all night like distant humming trains, while upstairs through an open vent came music soft as rain. You rented the small apartment there with crooked wooden floors, one lamp beside the window frame, thin lace around the doors. No glamorous evening dresses, no glittering smoky bars, only wool socks on hardwood floors in winter beyond the cars. A little phonograph played jazz beside your folding chair. Old records worn from too much use, tiny scratches everywhere. The singer on the record stopped. The room fell dim and still. Then quietly you took her place, just to fill the quiet still. Your voice came out low and breath warm, almost spoken into air, soft around the corners, unhurried, careful there. You sang like someone half awake, too tired to pretend, letting notes drift naturally without needing them to land. Below, the laundromat attendant paused beside the change machine, listening through the ceiling pipes to your slow in-between. Not sorrowful, not joyful, not trying to be profound, just the sound of someone keeping loneliness gentle in sound. Snow gathered on the alley stairs, morning crept behind the roofs, and somewhere in the fading dark, a milk truck wandered through. You finished on a little hum, barely more than breath, then closed the phonograph softly and climbed back into bed. Years later, people still recall that winter upstairs room, the woman singing quietly above the dryer's bloom.